This is a story. It's a Jewish story. Jewish. Jewish. That means it's got people in it who laugh and cry at the same time, and then those people nag you a lot and tell you what to do. You don't have to be Jewish to understand this story. But if you're not Jewish, find a Jewish person and ask them to explain the details. Be prepared for that Jewish person to laugh and cry at the same time, and then be patient while they explain the details. In so much detail that your head spins. Like this. This story's about me. Julie Levine, here I am. Yes, I know I look stylized. I like it. Some philosophers have questioned existence and whether we exist at all. And some scientists have postulated that we exist in parallel universes at the same time. So where am I, and why am I talking to you? What, you've got no imagination, people? You're watching an imaginative animation. If you want to watch a regular animation, this is not it. Yes, I'm ugly crying. That'll be explained later. This photo is where I used to live. 4th floor in Manhattan, New York. Morningside Heights, a brownstone. This is the view from my window. It looks lovely when it snows. Everything looks lovely when it snows because all sorts of dark things are hidden. Yes, I know the images are moving around. That's because it's how I feel, nauseous and unstable. Here's the elephant in the room, which is my pet. That was to see if you're paying attention. Keep up, people. Here's my office in Forest Hills, Queens. Yes, that's right. It says Julie Levine, clinical therapist on the plaque. We'll talk about the irony of that later, and I'm well aware the commute to work is a schlep. Yizgadal ve'yizkadesh. That's Hebrew, the opening of the Kaddish. Yes, Jews will know that's the prayer for the dead. You say it at a funeral. I know it's a downer, but stick with me. My father died June 27th, a Thursday. Jewish tradition is that you have to bury the body as soon as possible. Death becomes like the express line at the supermarket. Immediately, the family has to make 10 or under decisions while weeping. It's a good thing we Jews are used to weeping because it helps us multitask. We can weep and choose a casket at the same time. Yes, I know. I hide my true emotions behind jokes. I am a clinical therapist, after all. I know exactly what I do. But would you rather this? So you'll have to put up with the compulsive wisecracking, whether you like it or not. Where was I? I forget. Damn medication. Yes, the story. My father was buried Friday, June 28th. Are you paying attention? You should know that already. What a day. I was exhausted. What with the crying, and the wailing relatives, and the sitting on low stools, and the covering of the mirrors, and the ripping of the garments, and the carrying endless dishes of honey-broiled salmons from Zabar's. In my mother's kitchen, it nearly killed me. Death, as they say, is no holiday. Or is it death takes a holiday? Whatever. So at 2:03 a.m. precisely, I know, because I looked at my alarm clock by my bed, I woke up thanks to this noise. I thought it was a car alarm. It kind of sounds like a car alarm, and then I heard a voice.
Julie, it's me.
It was my father's voice, so I said, "Dad, you're dead."
I know I'm dead. You don't have to tell me I'm dead. A man knows when he's dead.
Figured I was imagining it, dreaming, then I heard...
You're not dreaming? It's me.
I had to be asleep. This was impossible.
Don't argue with me, Julie. I was dead, and now I'm back. I'm back for a purpose, to herald the Messiah.
And I thought to myself, stupid car alarm.
It's a ram's horn, a shofar.
I was scared. Ram's horns, my father's voice. Wouldn't you be scared? Don't pretend you wouldn't be. And then...
The coming of the Messiah is marked by certain events. This is in the Mishnah, the ancient Jewish book of the sages.
It was crazy. Dad was dead. I figured my subconscious was finding that hard to deal with. It was part of my mourning process, and then I heard...
Enough psycho babble. I know it's hard to believe, me being a non-believer and all, but there you have it. I, Adam Levine, your father, have been chosen to herald the Messiah.
Now there's a well-known Jewish word, meshuga. It means crazy. This was meshuga. But as I was thinking about it being Meshuggah, I heard—
Stop thinking about this being Meshuggah, and listen at what I'm going to tell you was written down thousands of years ago. Like I was saying, the coming of the Messiah will be marked by certain events.
And to myself, I thought, I should never have watched the re-release of the director's cut of it, Chapter 2. It has totally spooked me out. And then—
You're not listening. Listen! The vine will yield fruit, but the wine will be costly. That's inflation it's talking about. The empire will fall into heresy, and there'll be none to utter reproof. In New York, people don't believe anymore, like you.
This felt like a sermon.
Quiet! The council chamber shall be given to fornication. That's pretty clear. They're at it like rabbits. Children will shame their elders. Hello!
But Dad was never religious when he was alive. He thought being Jewish meant you ordered an everything bagel.
The sages say all the signs point to now.
Why was he telling me this?
Prepare to return to Israel. New York Jews must return there for the Messiah to arrive.
Now, I found this to be pretty ironic, considering I believe in the Nietzschean notion that God is dead. We live in a post-Nietzschean age.
Forget that
right?
fancy college liberal arts education now. Later, I'll tell you your role in this.
By now, I was fully awake. I pinched myself to check if I was dreaming. It hurt, but I simply couldn't accept my father telling me these insane things. Would you? So I thought, okay, if you're real, then tell me something that proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I left $37,540 in cash in the garage in a Nelson half-gallon paint can, high-gloss white.
Well, that was specific at least.
The Messiah is coming. There will be peace for 1,000 years. People will beat their swords into plowshares. Lions will lie down with lambs.
And with that, he was gone. And strangely, I fell into a deep sleep and slept like a baby. You're going to have to excuse me here because I have an itch. It's a stress rash, apparently. I know I shouldn't scratch because it'll make it worse. But you try not scratching. An itch can drive a person bonkers, and I don't need more to tip me further. Okay, it's probably bleeding now, but I'll deal with that later. Where was I? Yes, the next morning. So the next morning, I woke up and thought to myself, that was the weirdest dream ever. And I went to my parents' house in Teaneck, New Jersey, which was now only my mother's house, to continue that whole shtick of the sitting on the low stools and the listening to wailing relatives. It's called Shiva. 7 days of seeing people you're happy you usually never see. Anyway, to my mother, I mentioned the dream about Dad and the Messiah and the New York Jews going to Israel. And something ridiculous about money in a paint can in the garage. My mother tells me,
Let's go look!
And I tell her she's being all hocus pocus. There won't be anything in the garage. Except paint. But try telling my mother anything. She's 5'0" with the voice of a hydraulic jackhammer. Anyway, we go into the garage and I open a paint can. Nelson half-gallon flat white. And of course, there's nothing in it except dried out old paint. So naturally I say to my mother, I told you so. Because even though I'm a clinical therapist, I can't resist the urge to prove my mother wrong. And then my mother finds this other can. Half-gallon, Nelson, high gloss white, and she pries it open, and inside, wrapped in a pair of women's underwear, is a stash of cash. And my mother looks at me in her typical infantilizing way and says,
Always listen to your parents.
This is where I start to feel things are getting spooky. And perhaps I'm losing my mind. And I mention that to my mother, and she says,
That's what happens when you don't get married to Stephen Brinkman even though he proposed. By the way, he's done very well in telecommunications.
Because she can't resist sticking the knife in even though that was 8 years ago. Stephen Brinkman had erectile dysfunction issues. But that's another story. Anyway, I was kind of freaked out and confused when I got home that night. And the first thing I hear as soon as I step in the door is,
Where were you? I've been waiting.
So, I don't know what you would do in this situation, but this is what I did. I had a total meltdown. Yes, in the style of a graphic novel.
Maybe you should take a 1 milligram Xanax.
Yes, for once, Dead Dad had a good idea. I took a 1 milligram Xanax. It loosened me up. And what the hell? If you can't beat them, join them. So I spoke to Dad, who was somehow nowhere, and yet everywhere. We found the paint can. There was $37,540 in it.
I know, like I told you.
It was bundled in a pair of women's underwear, size large.
I forgot, don't ask.
Everyone thinks you're dead,
I am dead.
but you're here, talking.
Yes, because of my mission.
That Messiah stuff?
Yes,
But that's nonsense.
That's what I thought, that everyone prays for the coming of the Messiah. But no one expects him to come.
Is this the Christian Messiah, Jesus, or the Jewish Messiah?
Same guy. He's the Muslim one, too. And Buddhist and Hindu and the Messiah for those religions who don't have a Messiah. I mean, how many Messiahs does the world need? One is plenty.
This is preposterous!
Being dead, you understand things better than when you're alive. Like why DNA is a helix. And how come buttered bread always falls butter side down? Besides, you found the $37,540, which I've been saving for years.
Why would you put money in a can like that? It's out of character. You were never secretive with money.
For a rainy day.
The rainy day never came. You died.
Yep. This goes to prove that much of what we do when we're alive is meaningless.
I can still hear those words ringing in my ears. Much of what we do in life is meaningless. You can say that again? But this was just the start.
It's time for me to reveal your role in it.
In what?
In convincing New York Jews to return to Israel, so the Messiah will arrive.
Leave me out of this.
Gather the Jews of New York. I've written out a list. Starting tomorrow, go to the synagogues, the Jewish day schools, kosher butchers. Put an ad in the forward. The JCCs, the 92nd Street Y.
Hang on.
Don't forget the old age home around the corner. And Zabar's. Announce it on Facebook.
Dad, no way I'm telling people about messiahs in Israel. In other rantings.
Get the Mormons to help. The Jehovah's Witnesses can also lend a hand. Go to the TV stations, especially Fox. They'll love this. Speak to the editor of the New York Times. Get them to publish it on the front page. Tweet it.
So, you're getting the picture? Dad went on and on and on obsessively, like a maniac. A very boring, compulsive maniac who I couldn't get out of my head. Until finally, after hours of this, I fell asleep and had very uneasy dreams. Okay, I don't know about you, but I need a break here. Telling you all this is very traumatic. It's bringing up bad memories that I can't deal with at the moment. I have to play Jewel Quest Magic Match 3 on my iPhone, because that calms me down. I started off with Jewel Quest 2, 180 levels. After each level, you advanced along a map that was a journey in Africa. More jewels were added as you go along. There were 36 boards to play. Each playthrough got harder. For Jewel Quest 2, the boards weren't always the same as in the previous playthrough. For new strategies, the player's character was named Rupert, and the story was him searching for a golden jewel board in Africa. There's a romantic subplot with some woman named Emma, too, and a villain named Hani. Emma and Hani were somewhat irrelevant and boring. The final playthrough was done by Rupert. Oh, Rupert. I think I was in love with Rupert. Okay, I feel better now. Let's go on. The next morning I felt bad. Not regular bad where you don't want to get out of bed bad. Bad like a sense of imminent doom. And the end of the world is nigh. Now let this be a lesson for you. Always trust your intuition, people. When your intuition tells you you're spiraling down a wormhole to the pits of oblivion, believe it clearly. Something was wrong. I was speaking to my dead father. Plus, he was telling me stupid religious mania stuff. Hey, I'm a professional, and I figured I needed professional help. I went to see my psychiatrist and told her everything. Let this be another lesson to you. Sometimes don't tell people everything. That's my problem. One of them. I overshare. Like now I'm telling you everything. This whole animation is an example of me oversharing. Immediately, Dr. Golden, yes, that's her name, she diagnoses that
You're having a psychotic episode brought on by your father's death.
She says
It's not unusual that a person suffers a psychotic episode brought on by shock.
And she says,
I'm prescribing Zyprexa.
an antipsychotic.
Take Zyprexa.
Dr. Golden, in her calm and motherly way. Not like my mother, that is, like a mother on TV. She tells me,
And keep taking one until the voice of your father disappears.
naturally, I don't take this diagnosis well. It's never great news to hear that you're having a psychotic breakdown. But Dr. Golden has a point. So I get the prescription filled, and I take a Zyprexa. I'm going to segue here and explain a little about antipsychotic drugs. Why? Because, in case you haven't already noticed, that's the way my mind works. I like to go on tangents, and that's who I am, so you'll have to deal with it. Antipsychotics are used to manage delusions, hallucinations, and disordered thought, in situations including bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. I always liked the term disordered thoughts, as if thoughts need to be tidied up and put in place, like my shoes at the bottom of my closet, which are always in a mess. So I need to be prescribed a shoe rack. Antipsychotics block the brain's dopamine and serotonin receptors. But who cares? The truth is no one really knows how they work in the brain. Because no one has worked out exactly what consciousness is, and why and how we are conscious, and why sometimes our consciousness goes up the creek without a paddle, like mine appeared to have done. So after taking the Zyprexa, I went home and listened for Dad, or anyone. And at first, I heard only the sweet sounds of cars honking and ambulance sirens. And then...
That Dr. Golden ought to be sued for malpractice for putting you on Zyprexa. By the way, she's Jewish, isn't she? Did you tell her she has to return to Israel?
I took another Zyprexa, and then I said, "You don't give up, do you?"
Did you?
Of course not. The whole thing is nonsense.
How can you question a directive from God like that?
You're the one who taught me religion is an opiate for the masses.
That was before I was dead.
There is no God. There is no Messiah. And the fact is, there is no you. And once this Zyprexa kicks in, that'll be the case.
My mission is clear. I have to get you to gather the Jews of New York.
I know. Back to Israel.
No matter how long that takes.
No matter how long that takes?
Yes, time is irrelevant when you're dead.
You intend to nag me like this forever.
Einstein was right, you see. From this side, a lifetime is a second, and a second is a lifetime.
That doesn't make sense. I need a drink.
Don't you dare drink while you're on medication.
Why? Will I hear voices in my head? Ha, ha, ha. That was a joke, Dad.
I'm worried about you. You're acting very strange.
Look who's talking.
Now tomorrow you can start the mission. You want me to tell you the list again?
No, I do not want you to tell me the list again.
No need to raise your voice.
Sorry, but going insane is very stressful.
Relax. Think nice thoughts.
This is so stupid. The Jews of New York. Ha!
Huh?
Why not the Jews of Miami or London or Paris? Why New York?
That's whose number came up.
Like Lotto.
Every 100 years or so, a different place is chosen. It was New York's turn.
And of all the dead people, how come you're resurrected a beauty products wholesaler from New Jersey?
They wanted someone who had attention to detail.
Then how about you run around telling people about the Messiah?
I'm dead.
Why me?
I was asked who I loved most in the world. Of course I said you.
Dad, you're going to make me cry. Don't make me cry.
But it's true. From the moment you were born, you brought me only joy and happiness.
Really?
Joy and happiness, and occasionally I wanted to kill you. But you're my only child, Julie. My only delight.
You're all schmaltzy? You were never schmaltzy, Dad.
Being dead, a person can afford to be sentimental.
Dad, can I ask you a question?
Sure, but then we plan the return of the Jews of New York to Israel, okay?
What does it all mean?
What?
Life. What does it all mean?
And the meaning of life?
Yes.
The meaning of life is a life of meaning.
Doesn't make sense.
That's because you've taken 2 Zyprexa and chugged a scotch.
I always felt you wanted a son. I thought me being a daughter disappointed you.
Absolutely not. Having a daughter is the best.
But when I was 12 years old, you bought me a football for my birthday.
Your kicking was pretty good. Now back to business. I had a thought. Go and speak to the rabbis.
Oh, this again.
Of course, no one listens to rabbis, but it's worth a shot. Here's a list of them I compiled. There's Rabbi Green at the Great, Rabbi Koppel at Temple Emmanuel. Tell them it's on page 306 of the Mishnah. 4th paragraph.
This went on and on until I had taken 4 Zyprexa and its side effect, which is drowsiness, kicked in. And I fell into a stupor with saliva dribbling from the corner of my mouth. So, how you all feeling out there? Anyone need to go use the bathroom? I'll wait until you get back. No one. You're not going to get another chance till who knows when. Knowing me, it might be days. The next day, it's an understatement to tell you I felt suicidal. I felt worse than suicidal. What's worse than suicidal? Genocidal. I felt genocidal. I don't think that's right, but you get my drift. Another lesson, people. Until you lose your sanity, you don't realize how important it is. I was desperate, but as they say, desperation is the mother of invention, or something like that. And then I got an idea. A genius idea. Actually, as a clinical therapist, I know patients like it when you go along with their delusions. Ever tried arguing with a senile person? They could win a prize in debating. I made a decision. I decided to believe Dad. You know how they say in Zen, acceptance is everything? Well, I won't say it was everything, but I felt better immediately. And more than that, it gave me another idea. And this is where we get real Jewy here. I decided to go speak to the most religious Jewish authority in all of New York City, the Satmar Hasidic Rebbe in Williamsburg, and tell him the Messiah was coming. And the Jews of New York had to go to Israel, and that my dead father was a herald of the Messiah who had told me that. I was gonna solve this like a Jewish superhero. Now, I could explain here who the Satmar Hasidic Jews are. They're the ones in the long black coats and funny hats, and the 5,000 years of worry etched on their faces. They live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Not the hipster part. Next to the hipster part. Look, if you're curious, do your own private research later. I got his address from an ex-religious patient of mine. A woman who had gone off the path, and I took the train, and I got to Lee Avenue, South Williamsburg, and then I saw him come out of his office. Beard, black hat, side locks, the works. I ran to him, and his security guards tackled me, but they couldn't stop me, and I pleaded with him to hear me out. He could see I was very distressed, so he called his security guards off me. First, he told me—
It is impossible for me to speak to any woman who is not related.
But I refused to budge. I begged him I needed his advice, so he looked at and spoke to an oak tree. He didn't look at me. Apparently that got around the law of not addressing a woman directly. I explained my situation. How my father, who just died, is back harassing me about Israel and Jews and the Messiah. He listened and he stroked his beard.
Do not worry. We Jews are an ancient people with a history of prophesizing messiahs. The Hebrew scrolls are full of the coming of the Messiah. A dead relative is the most common messenger.
I was relieved. He believed me.
According to the Kabbalah and Talmud and other scrolls of antiquity, there are two ways to tackle the issue. One is to create a golem. A creature of clay who would rise from the mud of the East River and gather the Jewish people of New York back to Israel.
A golem is a creature made of clay, brought to life by the ritual of marking the Hebrew word emet, truth, on its forehead, a rescuer of the Jewish people. This solution sounded messy.
Only a Jew can herald the coming of the Messianic age. And so the second solution is that I can pronounce a heram, an excommunication, on your dead father. And he would no longer be a Jew. And since only a Jewish soul can herald the coming of the Messiah, it will no longer be him.
A harem with 2 E's is a Jewish excommunication, where a Jew is excommunicated and is no longer Jewish. And there hasn't been a good one since Spinoza in 1655. Now, according to the Satmar Rebbe's logic, and you have to admire the beauty of his stunning plan, my dead father couldn't be the herald of the Messiah. If he was excommunicated, it was genius. I couldn't wait to tell my father, and I couldn't thank the Rebbe enough. I wanted to kiss his hand, but he told me.
Only Catholics do that.
So that night, excitedly, I got home and yelled to my father about the harem and what the Satmar rabbi was going to do and how Dad wouldn't be the herald of the Messiah anymore.
No, Julie, no, don't. Don't destroy the chance to create 1,000 years of peace.
And then nothing. Silence. Because obviously the Satmar Rebbe had done his job. Goodbye, Dad. It would be awesome if this were where my story ended. I could speak about the paradox of how in religion certain mystical concepts are totally acceptable. There, the unknown is part of everyday life, and yet in the secular world, these very same concepts are considered psychotic delusions, and a person is medicated against them. And you could go and have a bite to eat somewhere, but unfortunately my tale of strangeness and woe doesn't quite end here. The next week, on a Wednesday morning at 2:07 a.m., again I was awoken, this time by a bright light in my eyes. Naturally, I assumed it was some car's headlights shining through my window, but then I heard,
Julie, do not be fearful, my child. It is I, Mary. You have been chosen by the Lord to hear the 4th secret of Fatima.
Huh? Mary? The 4th secret of Fatima? There were only 3 secrets of Fatima. I saw it in an old movie.
Yes, the messages I gave 3 children in Portugal many years ago. The 4th has never been heard by the world. The popes have kept the secret in a hidden vault in the Vatican for over 100 years. They have only told the world of 3 of the secrets. I will tell you the 4th.
Tell the Lord to leave me alone.
The 4th secret of Fatima, Julie. The one hidden from the world is the Jews of New York must return to Israel for the coming of the Messiah.
No! And so, dear people, now you know my story. I have a question for you. And then a request. Am I crazy? No. You heard what happened. I found meaning. The meaning of my life. I've been telling everyone, tell everyone, the Jews of New York must return to Israel for the Messiah to arrive. So there will be 1,000 years of peace. I don't belong here in Bellevue. They don't understand. Get me out, please.